51 audio. 51 audio.
I know a lot of you have been enjoying that wine from Francis Ford Coppola Winery, our official wine sponsor, Boulder International Film Festival. Thanks to Chris and everybody there. And also Bhakti Chai, who's been having a lot of chai out there. I know a lot of people have been drinking chai this weekend. Now I also want to thank our event staff who put on this fabulous party and many of the parties that you all attended this weekend. That's Joseph Cummins and Kathy DeBay, Jimmy Woods, Tom Morgan. Thank you guys. You guys put on a heck of a party. Want to thank the BIFF core staff and all the great volunteers at the festival this year. We could not have done it without you. Thank you. I want to specifically thank Chris Northrup, my sponsor liaison, our educational outreach coordinator.
And I would like to thank my ever-patient program assistant, Patty Abendraw, who has been fantastic and is part of the reason we've had such a fantastic program. Thank you, Patty.
Thank you, Chris. And I want to single out one person, too, that has really done a fantastic job this weekend. There's so many, of course, but Kevin Smith, the executive producer of the entire festival. Kevin, where are you? Screening, someone just said. He's busy. He's working his butt off, so thank you, Kevin. Okay, I also want to thank, just really quick, I'm not going to go through the list, but all the fabulous sponsors and donors to the festival. We couldn't do it without you either. You guys are fantastic, and you're the reason that we've been so successful. Thanks to all the sponsors, all the donors, to BIFF and the Colorado Film Society. We're going to get to the awards ceremony in just a second. I want to say a couple of things. The awards, as you see, are on this table right here. They're all made by the famous and often infamous sculptor, Bill Valier. Thank you, Bill. Stand up, Bill. Woo! Thank you. They're beautiful. I can't tell you how many great compliments we get from people like Martin Sheen and William H. Macy when they get a piece of art for their award. They're thrilled. And now I want to just make one short announcement about the People's Choice Award. How many of you have been voting all weekend for the People's Choice? Anybody? This is a really fun award that we just added last year, and we're doing it again this year. And what I want to say is, does everybody have a ballot right now for this film, for People's Choice? Who does not have a ballot? Raise your hand if you do not have a ballot for People's Choice. We want to make sure everybody gets one. They're handing them out now, so keep your hand held high and they'll get you a ballot. What we're going to do tonight, you guys, is they've been tabulating the People's Choice ballots all weekend. We're going to include tonight's film, and there's another film showing also at 7:30 over at the high school. They're going to tabulate those results, and we are going to hopefully, there's going to be a lot of suspense in the evening. We're hopefully going to have the results at the end of the Q&A after the film tonight. So what we're going to do is a little different this year. Right after the film screens, just like a church offering, we're going to walk down the aisles, have you do your People's Choice ballot, and send them in. So, yeah, and Robin just pointed out that, like church offering, if you want to put money in as some kind of a bribe, that's okay. Just kidding. So, we're going to do that. Look for that right after the film. So please get your People's Choice ballot ready after the film, and when we walk by, we'll ask you to pass those on. I want to thank the great People's Choice folks, Anya, Emily, and their whole gang that did a great job with People's Choice this year. Okay, we're ready to start the program of the, the awards presentations. Robin's going to take over and start the awards presentation.
Hi, folks. I wanted my selection committee to stand out. We have got 12 incredible folks who have been watching films for months. We watch probably up to 1,000 films altogether for the process, and you are seeing the best 50. Could you stand up? Or maybe they're not here, they've seen everything, they're tired. All right, thank you so much. Patty Bonet, Cole Bradley, Patty Brock, Jill Cheslett, Peter Dillon, Bob Blue, Marty Mapes, Tom Parkin, Anna Celine, Don Sniffen, Ken Wadja. Are you all here? Thank you so much for all of your work. And the jury, Marty Mapes is our incredible jury president who pulls it off every year. Where's Marty? Where are you, Marty? Great work as always. It must be back there. Patty Bruck, Jill Cheslett, Peter Dillon, and the great Jerry Aronson. Okay, folks. So I'm going to start off with the Best Short Film Award. And that goes to A Finger, Two Dots, and Me. Are you guys Italian? Come on up! This is Derek, the poet in the film. I don't know how many people saw the film. He wasn't there, but this is Derek, and it was incredible.
I was just ordering a drink and then I heard the name of the poem come up. That was amazing. First off, just real quick, wanted to thank Henry Rollins for when I met him. I told him what I was doing and he said nobody gives a fuck about poetry. And I wanted to thank you all for voting for a movie that had a $200 budget.
Real fast, thank you so much to the Boulder Festival. They've just been so supportive, and it's been a great experience, and thank you all so much. This is just an awesome, awesome festival, so thank you all very much.
Except for the next film. The next film is our best call to action film, which, as I think everybody knows a little bit about our call to action program. And this film absolutely moved everyone in the audience and was so incredibly powerful, and the comments I've been getting are just incredible. And that film is High Ground. Michael Brown, Don Hahn, are you here in the audience?
Well, this is very great, and I think I speak for myself and Don Hahn and many of the people in Boulder that helped make the movie possible. Good stuff. The film is about veterans and what it's like to come home from war, and I know that a lot of people that wanted to see the film didn't get a chance to, but we'll be around for a little while. We'll make sure that everybody gets a chance. So. Thanks so much to the festival. It's our favorite.
Best documentary short, which was also an incredibly moving film, is Incident in New Baghdad. Is James here tonight? Woo! Maybe not. Is he here tonight? No, darn it! He's going to be going to the Academy Awards next weekend. That's right. He'll thank BIFF. That was a requirement. And the best documentary goes to Wild Horse, Wild Ride. Are they here tonight? Woo! Excellent!
seen so many amazing documentaries in the past few days. Bitter Seeds, and I saw Cape Spin today, and Somewhere Between I've seen before. Amazing, and you guys have just done such a great job curating. It's an incredible program, and it's an incredible audience. I mean, the Boulder Film Festival rocks. You know, the people come out and just be so enthusiastic, and it has been such a wonderful experience for me. So I'm so touched. Thank you so much.
And the best feature film goes to, they're not here tonight, but I think we can all agree, Monsieur Lazare. Woo! That is such an incredible film. That is also a nominee for the Academy Awards. Now my final award goes to the best adventure film. And I think you'll all agree after watching this film tonight. It goes to Chasing Ice. Come on, guys!
Sundance, and we screened 11 times there, and this response is the coolest response we've had. We're all based here in Boulder. I've lived here for the past 4 years, go Bold. And there are many, many people here tonight who worked on this film. And I kind of was building a list just now of people I was going to thank later, but I'll just do this kind of now, and we can acknowledge a lot of the people here. But we have over 70 people, I think, who worked on the film like integrally over the past 5 years who are in this room tonight, and most of them are kind of in that section. Actually, you know, if everybody would like to stand up, I'm going to call you out later too, but everybody who was involved in the film, who shot in the field, they're really hesitant to stand right now. Our producers, Jerry and Paula, have worked with me for the last 3 years. My fiance is here, who has supported me so the editing team is here, Davis, Milkhouse, Adrian, and Bloom Animation. I mean, we have so many people who worked, people who shot with us in Greenland and Alaska, the field staff, scientists, donors to the film. I mean, I could literally go on forever. So I just want to extend an incredible thank you, and this award is for everybody over there.
Probably people don't, but yesterday was Jeff's 28th birthday. Maybe we can all sing a happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Jeff. Happy birthday to you. On this movie for like about 1/5 of his life. And just a quick reminder, we're going to do the People's Choice. We're going to announce it after the Q&A tonight, hopefully. There is a Q&A after the film, and we're so excited about it because it's going to be Jeff, of course, the 2 producers of the film, Jerry Aronson and Paula Dupre-Pessman, and also James Baylog, the subject of the film. So right after the film ends, we're going to send in the People's Choice, and then Ron Bostwick, who I want to thank as well for doing such a fantastic job the whole weekend. introduce Ron Rocks. Woo! He's going to do his final interviews of the evening with all of those 4 people, so please stay for that. It's going to be fascinating. And then we're going to do the People's Choice after that. So thanks so much, guys. Enjoy the film.
Before we bring our filmmakers up here to do a little Q&A with us and you guys, just a quick housekeeping thing. Remember that the People's Choice Award ballots are important to us tonight. There's sort of 2 reasons why this theater is sort of church-like right now. One, because I bet a lot of people in this room are praying that this film makes a difference. The other being that we're going to have people in the aisles like plate collectors. We're going to pass the plate and come and get your ballots. So please, rip a number if you would. You'll agree with me that it's pretty obvious why this film won a Best Cinematography Award at Sundance. Stunning visuals and beautiful, and your reaction tonight is the reason why at Sundance this film was scheduled to show 5 times. It showed 11 times to standing room only audiences. So let's get our filmmakers up here, the people who are responsible for this film. Let me start by introducing 2 people, the producers of the film, and everybody from Boulder. I mean, you know, we love living here, but we forget that we have world-class filmmakers right here in Boulder, and we'll start with these 2, a lady who is the co-producer of Mrs. Doubtfire in the last 3 Harry Potter movies, and a guy who's the producer and director of The Divided Trail and the Life and Times of Allen Ginsberg, Paula Dupre-Pesman, and Jerry Aronson. Aspiring cinematographers or directors in the audience. This guy picked up a camera for the first time only 8 years ago when he was shooting some stuff for the Tour de France, and now he's a winner at Sundance. Your director of photography, your director, Jeff Orlowski. And kind of what a difference, what I just said to Jeff was kind of what a difference a year makes, because there's this photograph of me with James Franco a year ago right over there, and in the background of the photo is this guy with a camera right in the front. And now he's up on stage over here. Jeff had a couple of things that he wanted to say and bring up a couple more people, so go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Ron. And thank you for the compliments about the cinematography. I do want to acknowledge that a lot of the imagery was done by a huge team. First and foremost, James, who you guys will meet in a second, but there are a number of people in here in the room today. Adam did a lot of the shooting. John Mann's helped with us. Michael Brown was on a couple of expeditions with us. So we had a large team that helped with the cinematography for the film. So there are a couple of people that I'd like to bring up to stage. And first is Adam Lewinter, who joined us on the trips in the field. He was in charge of all the time-lapse cameras, designed the systems, built the systems, tested them. So it was me and Adam, the two guys, filming that big cabin event, the glacier watching scene. So we have lots of stories to tell about that. But next up, I'd like to bring three of the scientists that are local here to Boulder, Colorado. Go Boulder! Dr. Tad Pfeffer has worked with us extensively throughout the entire project. He is an expert in glaciers in Alaska. He's gone with us out into the field many, many times to Alaska and has taught us a lot about how glaciers work. So I'd like to bring up Tad. There are two more scientists here in the film from NCAR. Thanks to Mariana who connected us to NCAR. But let's bring up Jerry and Cynthia. And they are assistant scientists at NCAR and mission on the field as well. And I think we have more plans. We got a bit of a tangle here.
We got a lot of people that we want to hear from, so we cables everywhere.
And lastly, a man who needs no introduction at this point, I have to extend my deepest thanks and gratitude to him for letting me document his story and letting me hound him for the past 5 years and follow him and bother him and his family and continue to do interview after interview after interview. James Bailow.
That doesn't happen every day in your life, you know? Thank you very, very much for all of that. On behalf of all of us, in fact. I want to just sort of get some questions going here that I have, and we've got some microphones here at the bottom of the aisles, and we would love to hear some questions from you guys here in a couple minutes in this great sold-out house. I'm sure that we have plenty of questions, but I just kind of want to get things going. And I want to start at the end. I want to start at the end of the film because I saw this a couple weeks ago on a computer screen and I was moved. And I couldn't wait to see it here in the theater with this sound, with how big this was. And I want to start at the end, and I want to start with Jerry and with Paula. Because at the end, it reminds me of I want to say the Chief Seattle quote that we don't get the earth from our parents, we borrow it from our children. And this film is dedicated to the children. You know, that what they're looking to have happen isn't for us. It's for our kids and for our grandkids. And I want Paula and Jerry to maybe talk about that too.
As anybody who knows me knows, I don't like talking publicly, but okay. When I first saw footage with Jeff and James in a Monte coffee shop 3 years ago almost, I was hooked seconds into the footage. And I came home and told Kurt, I have to do this movie. And he said, why? You're kidding me, you're still working on the code. And I said, it's for our kids. It's for Josh and Jesse. And it's for everyone else's kids, and it's for their kids. And so it was really, I think that was my passion, and I'm sure it obviously drove James. So I think the dedication was really appropriate. And it's all the crew's children in that section.
Jeff came to my house about 3 years ago, maybe, and showed me a trailer about 5 minutes long. It was pretty good, but I really didn't understand what was happening. And then just well, considering that it was pretty good. So anyway, then Jeff started talking, and the passion in his voice, and the excitement about what he was doing, and the story that he was recording about James Baylock, and what he was doing really grabbed me, and it was like, I couldn't let go of it. And I had just retired from CU teaching many, many thousands of film students. Woo!
1001.
Teaching, many, many film students about making stories out of what material they had. I said, how many hours of footage do you have, Jeff? He said, I don't know, 200, 300. That sounded about right. So I said, okay, I'd be happy to help you. And then I turned my house over to him and to Patrick and to Jimmy Goldhaber and the editors. And I said, go. And they already started, but then they worked for about a year and a half at my house. And I'd wander in every now and then and give comments. And I realized this was really something special. And that James was really doing something special. And that he had hired Jeff to record what he was doing. And Jeff did that. And then all of a sudden I realized there was footage. Enough footage for a movie. And I saw that. And I saw that in Jeff's eyes. And I realized I had to do this. I just had to do this. And it was for everyone. And I learned myself what was happening on the planet. I had no idea. I heard of global warming, I heard of climate change, and all of a sudden I saw it. And it was like I had to help. I had to help any way that I could. So.
The very first scene that we see in the movie from 2005, is that footage that you shot, Jeff?
No, there's some footage. Sorry.
2006, I think it's on the beach in Iceland.
There's some older footage that's of our shot with James when they were working out in the field together, and there's a couple other scenes that are on the beach.
But you've been working on this for how long?
I had first met James in about 2005 or 6, but I didn't go out in the field with him until March 2007.
We got involved in the project in 07?
Yeah, and so the very first trip that we went on together was installing the cameras in Iceland. And there is some additional footage that I shot that preceded that in the film as well. But that was the first trip that we went on together.
And you just turned 28?
I turned 28 yesterday.
So you started working on this film when you were 23?
Yeah.
Shit. Yeah, it's all downhill from here, buddy. You're on Sundance at 28, 27, you're done.
There were many, many times throughout the process where we thought the film was done. And we submitted we submitted this film, a very different version, but we submitted this film to Sundance 2 years earlier, and we didn't get in. And there were a couple other big festivals that we had submitted to that we did not get into, and we knew that there was something special there, and our test screenings, I mean, we had that feedback from people, but we knew that it wasn't what it could be. And so at that stage we were editing at Jerry's house, and then we kind of shifted the structure a bit. That's when we brought Davis on. Davis coming from Milk House. Let's do a round of Davis from the team. We did a major overhaul of the structure. We changed a lot of stuff, and we really worked on perfecting the story as best as we could with the footage that we had, and that got us to the later stage. But I've got a stack of DVDs at home of versions that I burned, that we screened, that we tested, that are an archive that I do not want to watch again. But there was a long process in the post-production.
I just want to say really fast that Robin Beck, the founder of this festival with Kathy, saw this film 3 times. She saw it 3 years ago and said, She saw it 2 years ago and she said, getting better, getting better. She saw it a year ago and said, getting close, getting close. And then she saw it like a few months ago and she said, that's going to get into Sundance. I want that film. I said, Robin, how do you know that? Jerry, it's going to get into Sundance. I want that film. So Robin Beck, wow.
I just want to make a note that anybody who flies through DIA, we got to get to our gate, we're late, all this stuff. Open your eyes as you go through DIA, because there are displays about EIS with displays and video displays also, all throughout DIA. So leave a little early next time you have to go to DIA and stop at one of these things and take a look at it.
Yeah, it's at each of the stops on the shuttle there. There's a little display there. And their video system is really bad, so it looks kind of bad. But
all right, so let me get to this guy next to me and ask you the important question. How are the knees?
Oh yeah, I'm the poster child for stem cell injections. They took stem cells out of my pelvis, cultured them, shot them into my knee, and it regrew the cartilage. So I'm my own actually does work, and I'm climbing and skiing and doing all the things I've always done. So life is good.
Jim, let me ask you a social question, and maybe you're the right guy, I hope so, and if not, maybe somebody along the line here is. Why don't people believe? For us to change people's perceptions, we've got to understand where they are now to take them somewhere else. Why don't people believe?
People are inherently a conservative animal species. The mind stays trapped in the places where the mind is. It doesn't change. The mind doesn't change quickly or easily, whether it's on an individual basis or on a collective basis. At the same time, we've got a gigantic problem of perception collectively, because there's a lot of forces out there that are trying to disguise clear perception. As Tad so eloquently said on the stage at Sundance a few weeks ago, it's much easier for the skeptical forces to sell confusion than it is for the scientific forces to sell clarity. Science is in the business of clarity. The skeptics and the pundits are in the business of selling confusion. And to sell confusion, you can say any old rubbish you want to. You can just make things up. And the power of the fossil fuel industry to feed those skeptics in that disinformation campaign is enormous. They have an enormous vested interest in maintaining the status quo. And that has been a terribly powerful force, an effective force, in masking this issue, confusing the public, and keeping us from being willing to go forward. There's another huge issue, and that is that we basically have a failure of the market system around the world, especially in the United States. And I'm not the first one who said this. There's world-class economists who have pointed this out. The price that we pay for that power coming out of that light, or the price that you pay for the power at the gas pump, doesn't actually reflect the cost of that fuel. The cost of that fuel isn't just refining and transporting and drilling and digging things up. It also should rightfully include military cost of defending these supply lines. It should include health cost. It should include environmental cost of all kinds of different impacts. And none of those things are in the price at the pump. They're all externalized and paid for by other sectors of the economy. So our perception is clouded by the fact that we're not getting proper information from the market system either. And if anything exists as a philosophy in the United States, is that markets control everything. So if we've got a distorted, confused market, we have a distorted, confused decision-making process by the general public and the political system.
I've got just a couple more questions for people up here. If you have some questions that you want to ask, please come to the microphones now, and as soon as I'm done, we'll have people right here that we can come right out to. Let me go down to the other end of the line here and ask a science question. I read a couple of weeks ago that a group of Russian scientists had found a lake 2 miles under the ice in Antarctica. Is that related to this? Is there, because all we've seen is up in the northern hemisphere. This is a story that takes place in the southern hemisphere. Is this an issue that's going on down in the southern hemisphere also? Anybody?
Yeah, these changes are occurring in the southern hemisphere as well, in Antarctica and in South America. And the situation there is very much the same. Antarctica is a colder place. It's not happening quite as fast yet. The potential is there for similar kinds of changes in the future. That's an area that's been studied extensively. We haven't gotten there with the Extreme Ice Survey, but we're working on it. But the same kinds of things are happening there. The same kinds of physics that controls glacier behavior works in the southern hemisphere the same way it works in the northern hemisphere. And the same potential for change is there. So, yeah, that part.
How did you go about picking the 24 places where you were going to place the cameras? What are some of the criteria that you were looking at? Is that a question for Jim, or is it for you guys?
Well, I could start in Alaska, which is one of the first places where this where the project started. One of the things that we were looking for were these glaciers that there are two kinds of glaciers that we're really interested in. One of them are glaciers that end in the ocean and interact with the ocean and calve icebergs. And one of the places that there are a lot of glaciers that do that is in Alaska, and other places in Greenland. So those were natural choices for that. And then also places on land where glaciers retreat very rapidly simply because climate is warming very rapidly. Iceland is one example. The Alps in Europe is another example. Glacier National Park is another example. Those were other choices for us. Some of it is a matter of opportunity. The Himalayas are a very difficult place to get to. We're starting to look at some Himalayan glaciers now, but we didn't get to those first. So part of it was opportunity. Part of it was looking for the places where the glaciers are doing the things that we want to photograph.
Let's bring the house lights up a little bit and see if we have any questions out here in the audience, because we want to give you guys plenty of opportunity to talk to these people right here on the stage. Let's start on this side right here.
Jim and everybody on the stage, on behalf of ARDE and the American Renewable Energy Institute, I want to thank you for the board and all of us there for making this amazing film, such an important film at this critical time. My question is, what is your hope that the film will achieve in this political year, 2012, and what are your plans going forward?
Thank you for that question. It's something that we as a whole team have been really trying to strategize and brainstorm around. And we've come to a couple of key points that we think the film can help leverage over the next several months. As has been expressed, we really did our premiere at Sundance. This is the second festival that we've been at so far. And so we're really kind of setting up the groundwork for a strategy to leverage social media, to leverage the web, to leverage word of mouth, to get the film out there as much as possible this year. So there are a couple things that individuals can do to help us in that process. One of them being, following us on Twitter or liking us on Facebook and engaging on the web in terms of that. And what we really hope to do this year is leverage those opportunities to have big impact in the fall. We've secured television distribution with National Geographic so far, and we're still talking about our theatrical distribution. And we are, the theatrical will likely happen in the fall of this year. And the big strategy that we're trying to do in leveraging those resources and those alliances that we have with different organizations is to create a big Convince a Skeptic campaign that gets tied in with the release of the film. And so right now what we're trying to do is create a network of people and organizations that can link us into their fan base and their constituents. And when the time is right, and when we're ready to release the film to the world after the festival tour, we're going to tie that into this campaign to really say, what can you do as an audience member? You can take this film and you can share it with a skeptic. And you can put pressure on the Mitt Romneys and the Senator Inhoffs and the Glenn Becks of the world. And you can call them out publicly and say, how can you have that perspective on climate change? You need to see the film, you need to learn about the facts, and if you don't, history will look at you as a fool. History will compare you in your political position as those slave owners and those that kind of a mindset that we have moved beyond this from a moral and ethical perspective, and by continuing to espouse the denier rhetoric, that's how you will be looked at in the future. So that's one of the big things. Be part of the network, be part of the movement, like us on Facebook, and when the time is right, we will be reaching out to our fan base and trying to leverage everyone's effort.
One of the magical things that happened at Sundance was it catalyzed 4 different opportunities to put this film directly in the hands of Barack and Michelle Obama. And we intend to make that happen. And there's little pushes going all across the United States right now, making sure that we get a chance to present it to the president. Not that we're necessarily going to wind up in the White House, but at least the film will be there.
You want to tell the Rahm Emanuel story?
Yeah, we were at a screening. It was about screening number 8 or 9 at Sundance, and I got this email from my brother in Connecticut. Okay, now this is a screening happening in Utah. I get an email from Connecticut, And he says, a friend of mine is in that theater in Utah right now. And she says that the guy sitting right in front of her is Rahm Emanuel, the president's former chief of staff at the White House and current mayor of Chicago. So we had this frenzy of text messages between us. And we decided we're not letting Ron out of that room until we get satisfaction. So
Real politician.
Yeah, exactly. I staked out the back door where he could get out. Jeff staked out the front, and we kind of did a full court press, and we got 10 minutes with him. And he loved the film. And the first thing he said was, Barack and Michelle, they love movies. It's a family night. Twice a week, they get together and they watch films. They have to watch this. So we have his phone numbers, his private cell number, and his email address, and we talk to him, and we're orchestrating this. We're also trying to put the story in a lot of other airports, and we have great opportunities to do that in O'Hare. Ron is working on that. I got a call from the Chicago Transit Authority earlier this week saying, okay, what do you need? And I told him, and so we'll go out on a scouting mission and start picking sites in O'Hare Airport.
We are super excited to screen for the president, of course, but at the same time, we want to be very strategic from a political perspective about where the film falls. We have alliances and access to Al Gore, but we don't want an Al Gore stamp of approval on the film. That would, from our perspective, it would hurt how we would be able to be received by half of our audience. So part of that Convince a Skeptic campaign is something where we really want to get politicians from both sides of the aisle to embrace the film and to support it and say this is something that, you know, even if somebody was a skeptic or even recently is a skeptic about climate change, they can use the film kind of as their scapegoat, as their reason for changing their stance, and they can save face by tying that in with the film. So we're trying to be strategic from a political perspective.
We firmly and strongly believe that climate change and the causes of climate change and the facts about climate change on the ground are a non-political issue. They don't belong to a political party, and they don't belong to religious denominations. We're all in this together. We've all caused it. We can all fix it. And we don't want this to be hijacked by political interests and distorted into another stupid wedge issue like all these other issues have been distorted in the United States.
Thanks. Good question. Can I tell the camera story about the church, or do you want to do that?
No, you go ahead.
You got it. So Nick Forrester from E-Town, I'm going to go to him with a question, but one of James's time-lapse cameras is in the church, the E-Town church, a block away, and hopefully you won't have any calving at the church. But we'll have that same type of time-lapse when the church opens. Nick, you have a question?
I did have two questions, and they've both been answered really beautifully. One was simply how are you going to avoid what I felt was the shortcoming at the end of Inconvenient Truth, which is you get the audience there and then there's nothing really to do. So it sounds like you're really using social media, you're going to put your strategy together, and that's great. And the second question was about how to depoliticize this critical issue, and you answered that too eloquently. So I have nothing to say, but thanks for asking.
That's why you sat down. Joellen.
Thank you so much, and you guys have an unbelievable tool, and you've created this gift to share to the world. And I started the day watching The Island President, and I ended the day with this film. And my activist heart is aching. And I'm a social media person, and I know we can make unbelievable noise out there. But if we're in this theater, we're not willing to change, it won't matter. And so I'm wondering, you guys who sat out for 17 days in a row on the ice, watching that, waiting for that cab, what thoughts were you thinking about how the world could look different after people watch this film?
It's a great question, and we were very fortunate to get to do that. And in the film, it looks like we were just waiting and waiting and waiting. There was a lot going on. Jeff and I both feel really fortunate to have seen it. And if we weren't there, maybe people would know about it, maybe they wouldn't. We caught it on tape. We filmed it, and we're showing it to you. And so hopefully that that effort can go out and make a difference. At least, even in the smallest, just knowing that something like this happens. And larger is making some own action on your own.
Kind of going along with that, we saw the guy from Shell Oil who said, I saw this and I had to quit and join you guys. Do you have any other stories like that of people who have been that affected by the story that have sort of crossed the line and come over to your side?
I've had a number of them actually. I was at a museum in Florida and gave a normal slideshow and lecture, and this very distinguished white-haired old gentleman came up to me and he had on this canary yellow jacket and madras pants, and he'd just come off a golf course or whatever, and he said, "Young fella, you convinced me, and you have no idea how important it is that you convinced me, and how hard it was to convince me, but you made a believer out of me." And I said, "Well, okay, pleased to meet you. Why should that mean a lot to me?" He said, "I'm the former head of exploration of Texaco." And I thought this was all a bunch of BS. I gave a talk at the University of Utah back just a few months ago in November, and Terry Tempest Williams, who's writing the introduction for this ice book that we have coming out this fall, Terry brought her father there. And they're kind of a little edgy with each other, because Terry, as you all know, is a famous environmentalist and a very sensitive and passionate and thoughtful and philosophical one. Her father, according to Terry, put more miles of oil and gas pipelines in the ground than almost anybody else in the western United States. And that's a point she's not too enthusiastic about. But she went to see him the morning after the talk, and it was 7 o'clock in the morning. She walks in the house, and he's sitting there in his chair. He's now like late 70s, handsome man, rangy, rancher kind of a guy with, you know, denim jackets on and cowboy hats. And he said, "Terry, I've always thought that these environmentalist speakers you've made me go and see were a bunch of wackos. But that story and that guy, I get it now. We have to bring this story to Utah. And what I think we ought to do is show it on the Jumbotron at the basketball games of the Utah Jazz."
One more Utah story. We did a high school screening out there while at Sundance. A 350-person venue, and at the end of the Q&A, the very last question, this girl asked if we thought that the film would have any change in the perception around climate change. So I asked the audience, I asked, for how many of you did this film change your opinion of climate change? And honestly, like 3/4 of those students raised their hands. And that was, Paula was there, I mean, that was so meaningful to us that, especially in a group of high school students like that in Utah, in Salt Lake City, that we were able to tap into something that was, you know, deep in their minds, and we were able to shift the perception for them.
Let's go to a question over here, please.
What can we do, all of us, to get the word out about the film?
Couple of things. First off, as I was saying, Facebook. And secondly, we will have at the back, as everybody leaves, we have a team of, I think, 4 or 5 people. Larissa's standing up there waving her hand, wearing chasing ice hats. And we'll be collecting information from people if they want to get involved, which is kind of like one of the easiest ways to access. And specifically, if we want to set up screenings at your local high school, at your elementary school, at your kids' school, at your church group, anything like that, this is one of the ways that we're trying to set up a grassroots movement. The best and easiest way is Facebook. This is a really good option, just that's immediate right now. There's another thing that we like to say in terms of what people can do at an individual level. And I take inspiration from James about this. We say it in the film that James used his tools and skills as a photographer to tell this story and to use the tools that he had available to him to do the best that he could. I feel like everybody on our team and everybody in that section of the room who helped out, we all have different skill sets. We all have different capabilities and different ways we can contribute. Whether it is a scientist or an engineer or an editor or a writer or a composer or a designer, like all these different people came and helped our project with the very different skill set that they had available to them. I would challenge everyone in the room to say that each of you has something that you can do that can make a difference. Whether it is just, you know, making a post on Facebook, or if it is making a financial contribution to the Extreme Ice Survey and to Chasing Ice for for our outreach campaign, or if it is just spreading the word about the issue, or convincing a skeptic. Everybody can do something to help out with it.
You know, you've got the logo, the EIS logo. You may have to get a new logo, CAS, Convince a Skeptic logo. Come up with one. Let's, right here.
So, to the whole team, this was a wonderful piece of work, so thanks very much for that. Looking to the future, also, not just in how to make a change through action, but also how to convince through other lines of effect that are going on. I thought I'd ask if the scientists could talk about ocean acidification, and maybe if the filmmakers could talk about how to show that. What could be a way to see that?
Start down at that end. Anybody?
Yeah, well, I don't see exactly how ocean acidification is related to the icebergs. Ocean acidification is a real and very severe problem. Some people have said it's probably the most serious possible consequence of global warming, because it has the potential to devastate so much of marine life and corals. I'm not sure how it relates to this film. I think that would be a completely separate subject.
As far as my knowledge goes, well,
for about 3 years, I've been amassing a huge file of photographic ideas about how to bring anthropogenic change alive visually. It's been really apparent to me as we've kind of worked our way through the ice and through the time lapses that, and through the knowledge base, there's a huge knowledge base out there in the world about how humans are altering the basic ecosystems, the physics, the chemistry, the water supply, the hydrology, everything on the Earth today. That's why science has given this era of geologic time a new name. The name is no longer the Holocene, it's now the Anthropocene, to recognize that anthropoids are the dominant agents of geologic change on the planet today. And there have to be at least 25 different things I can think of, or that I've got on lists in the office, about how we can photograph that, whether it's with repeat photography or time-lapse or traditional photography or whatever. We have 9 cameras out in the Rocky Mountains right now doing time-lapse of how the pine beetles are killing off the pine trees, all the way from down in the San Juans up into the Wind River Range in Wyoming. That's a function of climate change. Let anybody tell you differently. That's a climate change story. We're also looking already at dust transport coming out of the Utah desert in big windstorms and dumping on the snowfields of the Elk Range and the San Juans. Again, changing the hydrology of the snow because it makes the snow melt faster. So that's what we've been, that we've had the time and the financial capacity to do thus far, but there's the rest of my life can easily be spent working on illuminating these issues, and I intend to do that.
And there are filmmakers working specifically on ocean acidification as well.
Jim?
I don't want to derail the discussion on the environmental crisis here, but just watching this film, I'm reminded of Bruce Conner's 30-some minute film in which he filmed atomic bomb explosions one after another, and you get mesmerized by the beauty of those images, which are inherently so destructive. And I felt the same tension in this film, and I think, James, you even at a point in the film, you reference that you're watching something that is so awe-inspiring, just aesthetically, so beautiful, and at the same time, you are watching the potential catastrophe for the planet. And I'm just wondering if anyone wants to just talk about that tension.
It was that miracle versus horror, is the way it's put in the film.
I think that's something that James and I have spoken quite a bit about, and I think we tried to kind of plant that story even in James's past work when he was photographing the hunting and then the endangered species, and that kind of light bulb that he had in terms of, if you have a horrific story, how can you tap into a way that audiences can respond to it? There are lots of different aspects of the climate change story that James could have photographed. Coal, oil, like there's lots of dirty sides of the climate change story that we could have covered. And I think it is completely to James's credit that he came up with a concept to make it resonant emotionally, to create imagery that people would fall in love with and kind of just fall into. And through that as a vehicle, as a mechanism, to let people learn about the climate change almost underhandedly, like suck them in through one thing, but then deliver the blow through this medium. So,
question over there.
Yes, that was actually the perfect lead-in to my question. That last scene with the calving was so incredibly powerful and beautiful and yet heart-wrenching at the same time. And we're in our social and cultural history at such a tipping point. And I'm often baffled by those moments where that last molecule of ice melts and it's what sets off the entire chain of events that we witnessed. And so I guess my question is, how long did that take? Are we talking hours or minutes?
For the calving?
Yes. Yeah.
I just realized today that the calving event is the same length as the film. It's 75 minutes, the film 76. So it's like that's how long it took. And Adam and I, we were calling James up every 15 minutes on the satellite phone, being like, "It's still happening. It's still going on."
Jim was actually, I think you were at the Flatirons Athletic Club. And we were doing our daily check-in, and we saw what happened. We had to hang up the phone, and 15 minutes later, we knew that he was just sitting there, like, "Oh my God, what's going on? What's going on?" We called him back and just said, "Hold tight, it's still happening." Called him back another 15 minutes later, and it just kept going.
I was actually in the office at night. I was getting ready for another expedition to Greenland about 2 weeks later. So these guys went up to do round one, and I was going up to do round two. But we were all sitting by the phone. Sport and I were sitting there going, "Oh my God, what's happening? What's happening?" And these guys were teasing us, and then eventually called back and said, "Well, we got it. It's happening."
Come over here, please.
I guess this would be for the scientific group on the left-hand side of the stage. Why is it that, my understanding is about 98% of the published papers now on climate change are saying it's human caused, and then there's the 2% skeptic bunch. Why is it with our own human health that we always go with the 98% science? I don't think there's a person in this room that personally hasn't had a health scare, a coworker, a friend, a loved one, and we go with the 98% consensus. Why is it in the case of climate that the skeptics are waiting for irrefutable 100% consensus? Why can't we get there like we do with our own bodies?
But maybe trace partly to a word that's was used a couple times here already tonight, and you say, well, do you believe in climate change? That's the wrong question. It's a matter of evidence. We're scientists, we're looking at evidence, and I think this is the really tremendous thing about this film. You're seeing visual evidence of a change that's occurring in the climate system due to warming. There's just no way around that. And I think people have, it's now morphed from a science question to a political question, which then gets into belief structures and a lot of really messy things. So as scientists, we're looking at the evidence, and the evidence is overwhelming that the warming is occurring, overwhelming that humans are causing it. But to communicate that takes things like this, and I think this is a fantastic opportunity in a visual, dramatic way to communicate a big chunk of evidence that this is happening, and I think that's what's really a powerful part of this film.
Just to follow on from that, I mean, we all are scientists, we go to scientific meetings and talks all the time, and nothing hits me in the gut in a scientific meeting, nothing makes me cry or get startled, but this movie did that. And this is the kind of thing we need to convince people and the public that it's the visual thing, and they're hitting you in the gut, thinking, "Whoa, this is really true." You know, it's not another PowerPoint chart, it's not another scientist graph. It's there. It's undeniable. So it's really incredibly powerful, and we need more people like that, more stuff like this going on.
Yeah, and on this point of semantics, I'm glad you brought that up, Jerry, because in my public lectures, I always start out talking about, folks, I don't want you to believe in what I'm showing you. I want you to think about what I'm showing you. And we have slipped here a little bit tonight into using belief, but I really try and set this up as this is a question of evidence, and this is a question of rational processing of evidence with your mind. One of the big problems in American society right now is that we are slipping into these polarized camps of belief. Everybody's locked in their belief systems, especially on a certain side of the spectrum. And when you wind up with a society that doesn't know how to think anymore, pretty soon you're in the Middle Ages, you're in religious warfare in Europe, or you're more associated intellectually with the Taliban in Afghanistan than you are with the Western intellectual tradition. I think that's a real problem. That's a serious long-term threat to the quality of our political system and our social system. We have to keep thinking and not wind up getting too bogged down in our beliefs.
One last thing to add to that, from a political perspective, there are somewhere between 4 and 6 lobbyists from the fossil fuel industry for every member of Congress. And when you're competing against numbers like that, when you're competing against funding like that, how can you make progress? How can you change anything from a political system when they are being bombarded by specific interests like that?
When corporations are people, people are nothing, because the corporations can outspend all of us too much. It all fits together in a gigantic socio-political environmental ecology. No one of these things is separate from the other. They're all connected. And Bill McKibben is on this in a big way right now, that we have to break down this corporations or people ruling by the Supreme Court. Somehow that needs to get overturned with a constitutional amendment, God help us. But until that happens, we've got a big problem.
Come on to a question here.
Amazing film. You totally changed my perspective on all this. It's not political, it's not scientific, it's, excuse my naivety, but when you were watching that 17-day calving, how close were you? I mean, how many times did you think, oh my God, I'm gonna die? And how did you know where to put the cameras so they wouldn't, be part of it and fall in?
I gotta tell you, I've never seen a helicopter land like a plane. It scared the crap out of me watching that. I mean, I wasn't even in the thing. I can imagine what it was like.
That glacier, where the actual action was happening, is about a mile away from where we were. So we were camped on bedrock, on solid ground. There was no risk to me or Adam for that particular event. In terms of things moving off, there are many other times where, in retrospect, we could have died. I think I have to give a lot of credit to Adam. The scene in the Mulan where the water is raging down that hole and we're rappelling down, and Adam's like has to look down. We spent 4 days in that canyon shooting there, trying to just capture what we were trying to. James's photograph that he wanted to get, and we had to keep going back down there. James and I were over the part where there was solid ice there, seemingly solid ice underneath us. Adam had to be over the waterfall. So he definitely had the toughest part of that job. But we were, and also to James's credit, we took safety very, very seriously on all of the trips. You see in that footage multiple ropes. We took lots of training on glacier travel, on glacier rescue, and safety precautions like that. So I think that the field team felt very confident and safe when we were out in the field, for the most part.
Let me go back to Jerry and Paula for just a quick question. I noticed in the credits that it says that the music was done in November and January. November of last year and January last month. You guys were at Sundance last month. Was the music being done like that morning?
Pretty much.
And I feel like there's that scene in the movie Broadcast News where they're running the tape as their anchor is about to intro, and they throw it in and hit play and it goes on the air. Yeah. And I feel like the music was that way.
We called our composer and asked him if he would do the film. We weren't in Sundance yet, and he said yes, and we were so excited. He's an Oscar composer, he's fantastic, and his music's beautiful. Then we found out we're getting in Sundance. We were like, yes, we're getting in Sundance. Shit, we're getting in Sundance. Like, we were fundraising and calling everybody, and Davis and his team were working round the clock. Everybody was crazy, and we were calling the composer constantly, like, we're gonna get the music, right? Can we hear it? Can we hear it? And it was a little bit stressful. And it was actually my birthday party, and Jeff shows me his phone. He's like, I got the music. And that was January 6th. The party, I think, was the 6th. And so he went to Skywalker, and literally the music was like coming in through the weekend. And then we found out Scarlett was singing this in-credit song that the composer wrote. And he's like, yeah, she's coming over to my studio, and she's going to record this song.
We didn't hear it for the longest time. We literally he gave us the final version an hour before we had to lock the mix at Skywalker. And it was literally, all right, last thing that's going in, listen to it once, did a mix, okay, we're done. So it was a little down.
And Jeff did do that. You ran to the airport with it in the morning on Tuesday, flew to Sundance, and screened that night. So.
And part of that that's even more amazing is our original premiere was going to be on the 23rd of September. And they called us, January, right? And they called us with this great honor from Sundance that they had chosen our film of all the documentaries to show to the volunteers 2 days before Sundance.
Yeah, 6 days.
6 days, whatever. But
every day counts.
This film would have been done in April or May. All of a sudden, it was even another week. So Jeff literally did it that weekend, right? And flew to Sundance, and there it was. And 500 volunteers loved the film, and I think that really helped it at Sundance. So, his persistence was amazing, amazing.
The Boulder International Film Festival's own version of Price Waterhouse has been tabulating all of the People's Choice Awards, and we're going to make that announcement in just a minute, but I want to thank all of these people on stage, all of the people over there for this fantastic piece of cinema and piece of art and a great message. It's a great way to wrap up BIFF this year for 2012. Please help me in thanking the people who put together our closing night film, Chasing Us.